top 3 tips for success. I would say first and foremost, solve a problem that people care about.
Welcome to Jane Jackson Careers, a podcast that takes your career to the next level. Here's your host, Jane Jackson, author of Amazon Careers bestseller, Navigating Career Crossroads.
Welcome back to my Careers podcast, where I interview fascinating professionals who have made amazing career changes and entrepreneurs who are simply amazing people. So if you're an entrepreneur or simply running your own business, you'll know that it's never simple. One really important thing we have to do is social media marketing. This can get so time-consuming and overwhelming, so I was on the hunt for a really good application that would take the pain out of the process. I discovered Social Jukebox. Within 1 hour, I'd changed my social media marketing life. Happy days. So I decided to find out who was the genius behind this tool, and I found Mr. Tim Fargo and tracked him down. Now, Tim is the president and CEO of Tweet Jukebox and Social Jukebox. He was born in New York, grew up in Akron, Ohio, has lived in Miami, Boca Raton, Newport Beach, Guatemala, Birmingham, Alabama, Tucson, Arizona, Stockholm, Warsaw, Phnom Penh, and Cape Town. He's founded many businesses, most of which apparently failed miserably, but a couple of businesses did very well. So I thought, what a perfect person for my Careers podcast. So a little bit about Tim. He is a 2 times Inc. 500 winner, entrepreneur, international speaker, best-selling author of Alphabet Success, which is an amazing book that leads us from a heartbreaking bankruptcy in 1991 to the founding of Omega Insurance Services a few years later, and then its eventual sale for $20 million US. Tim Fargo has traveled many trails and is a serial entrepreneur. He also wrote Claimants, Lies and Videotape, a claim handler's guide to surveillance, which is now an insurance industry standard for investigative education and a certified course in over 20 American states for continuing education credits. This man knows no bounds. He's unconventional, he's driven, he's focused, and always seeking a fun way to get the job done. And welcome, Tim. It's great to have you on the show.
Hey, Jane. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm really thrilled to have you on the show. So, to kick us off, because this is a careers podcast, how about we start off with just finding out about what your career aspirations were when you were a little boy before you became this amazing entrepreneur?
I don't know how this is going to sound to your audience, but it's the truth. From when I was a little kid, I always wanted to have money. Mm-hmm. Not money in and of itself. I always just liked the idea of being successful enough to have a fair amount of freedom to do kind of what I wanted to do. And I used to make lists of all the stuff I was going to do when I had some money. Really, I mean, when I was a little kid. So I was, and I had all the usual, I guess, kind of pre-entrepreneur jobs. I had a paper route. I delivered stuff for neighbors that didn't like leaving their houses. I shoveled snow. I cut grass. I basically did anything I could think of that would help people that they would pay me for.
And what was your very first job after you graduated?
Well, it was really funny because I thought I was going to become a banker. And what ended up happening is I started looking around, and I happened to have met someone doing some work for a friend of mine, and we ended up working together. And actually, you had mentioned Social Jukebox, and he was the creator of Tweet Jukebox for me. He's actually the first person I ever worked for, and we've worked together. Len and I have worked together in a few iterations. But the first job I had out of college was selling custom software.
So being within that IT software area has always been in your blood in a way. But with regard to going into finance or going into banking, and that really wasn't quite for you. I know when I was doing a little bit of research and finding out about you, you actually ran a insurance business, didn't you? How did you get into that?
Well, it was insurance investigations, and I'm pretty agnostic as to like businesses as long as I think they're interesting. And I had met some guys that had an insurance investigation business, and they asked me to come work with them. And the first time they asked me, I actually thought it was pretty funny because I had a really nice job working for a very wealthy guy that owned a lot of real estate, and I was really happy doing what I was doing. It was easy. It was a couple blocks from my house. It was perfect. But as I looked into the business, there were a lot of opportunities because it was, and there are a lot of businesses like this. It was characterized by a lot of market participants, but not a lot of what I would call real competition, if you know what I mean by that. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of people doing it, but not a lot of people doing it very well. So I ended up going into business with those folks, and then we had, as they say, creative differences. And
as you do.
Well, they seemed to get to a certain point, and they wanted to go have a good time. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that, but I had a little bit different goals. So I went my own way and built my own company doing the same thing. So
And so was this Omega Insurance?
Yeah, Omega Insurance Services. So what we did in the U.S. when you get hurt working, workers' compensation is private insurance, and it's not the case in a lot of the world, where a lot of that insurance can be handled by either the government or quasi-governmental things. But in the States, it's private. So when you get injured, if the insurance company doesn't think you're injured, they send people like my old company out to have a look at you and do surveillance and see. Like if you say, "Oh, I can't even pick up my work boots," and and then like we had a gal that was she was a waitress from a large food chain in the U.S. and she claimed she couldn't even get out of bed, and we actually filmed her winning a 5K running race. So
unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, they're not all quite that dramatic, but there are obviously some where people that were participating in rodeos, motocross racing, all while receiving work benefits because they allegedly couldn't even make it to their workplace. So that's what we did. I mean, we checked on people for insurance companies, and and it was a great business. So.
Yeah, and and obviously this would have led you to writing this guide, the Claimant's Lies and Videotape, a Claim Handler's Guide to Surveillance, which now I believe is an insurance industry standard for investigative education. That's amazing. I mean, the fact that it's become a certified course across the states is incredible. So you must know an awful lot about this surveillance.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, what that was, it's actually funny because people talk about content marketing now, and that's what that was. Because what I observed in our clients was an awful lot of people trying to use the tool because that's what we were, right? We're a tool. An insurance adjuster has a bunch of different tools they use, and we were one of them. And the problem is that very often people would use that tool in an inappropriate way. And the reason it mattered to me was I wanted them to get the best possible results. And there's some things investigations can do for you, and there's some things investigations can't do for you. So I designed the course to try to optimize the results that an insurance adjuster or an insurance person would get from using surveillance on a claim. Because like sometimes people would want to put surveillance on somebody because they were annoying. Annoying doesn't mean fraudulent. Annoying could just mean you have a lack of interpersonal skills.
Very true.
And just because you're really nice doesn't mean you're not a fraud. And actually, I would say a lot of people that are frauds are very well versed in how to play other people. So trying to get adjusters to look at the real red flags and things like that. I mean, that was the goal of that book, is to try to get people to understand, like, look, there's some things we can do and some things we can't do, and here's how to use this thing to your best advantage. And so, I mean, I was really mad one day because somebody had really dressed me down over something, and it was completely not our fault. I mean, it was them using us in the wrong way. And that quote, I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt, better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. So I was like, you know what? I'll write a book about it, and I'll get people to try to use us the right way. Because that's, being mad isn't solving any problem. So let me see if I can fix this.
Oh, it must have been really interesting in this line of work, because it would have helped you to learn how to read people and really read between the lines. Because I'm just thinking, going into entrepreneurship, you meet so many people and you put your trust in so many people as well. And if, there are those out there who seem nice but might be fraudulent, this is where so many entrepreneurs, especially the new ones, can get into trouble because they end up being too trusting of others. What do you think?
I think that's completely right. And one of the things I find very interesting is how often people focus. And I'm not saying it's completely ill-placed, but they'll focus so much on the language of a contract. And that's important. But what's a lot more important is not signing a contract with someone who's not going to honor it. Because the language of a contract only guarantees you that if you have a fight, that you'll prevail in court. And trust me, the last thing you want to do as a business person is end up in court. What you want to do is have people that you can trust. I mean, the contract ultimately, in an ideal world, just sets the boundaries of your relationship so that it's pretty clear to both parties. But when people don't know who they're doing business with, as you just said, the contract becomes worthless, because if you're in business and you're trying to, especially if you're just starting out, you've got so many other things to do. If you think you're going to run off and save the day by rescuing an agreement in court, the key is to do the due diligence up front and make sure that you know who you're dealing with and that they're going to honor their commitment. And it's much more important than, an extra paragraph in your contract.
I think that's one of the most valuable lessons that any entrepreneur could learn. Leading on from that, you're also a best-selling author of your book Alphabet Success, which is your story of building the business and overcoming bankruptcy and founding the business and then eventually selling it for over $20 million US. Tell me a little bit about Alphabet Success.
Same kind of principle about business books. It's because Alphabet Success is a very short book. It's less than 100 pages. And my idea there was I was going to a meeting to talk to some more like colleagues than employees about business. And a lot of business books tend to be very highfalutin, self-congratulatory, and not particularly easy to implement off of. It's sort of, there's a lot of information there. How much of it is actionable is kind of questionable. I'm not saying there's some great business books, but so my idea was, maybe if you could just give people some fundamental things, and they could execute on those fundamental things, that would be a better way to serve people than to just blather on endlessly about things that they might or might not implement, and they might or might not, even understand how to relate to their own business. Because frankly, I actually think business isn't really that complex. Very often we actually make it more complicated than it needs to be. So anyhow, the whole point of the book was, let me try to share some of the things that I've learned with other people in a really basic way. And the whole reason behind the alphabet was to allow people to get like a mental anchor associated with a particular lesson.
And so is the name Alphabet Success something to do with, say, the A to Z or the A to Z of starting a business in a way, or how to overcome challenges?
It's just a series of lessons, and they're anchored to acronyms that
Mm.
are, just ABC, always be committed. DEF, don't ever forget to say thank you. GHI, get highly inspired. And then I have like a little story and a lesson for each one of those. It's a very brief, actionable, and it's interesting. I mean, sometimes people that have read it have said to me, "Well, I liked it, but there was really nothing in it that I didn't know." And then my question is, "Yeah, okay, you knew it, but do you do it?"
Mm.
Um, and I really think that's the real key is you know knowing is lovely, but doing is a lot more effective.
I I absolutely agree. It's so funny because, as you know, I'm a career coach, and when I'm coaching, what I'm doing, it's not rocket science. It just isn't rocket science, but it's the support and the encouragement. So you already know this. Let's take action on it. And sometimes, I'll say something, and people go, "Oh, yeah, I knew that." I said, "Okay, you knew that, and what are you doing about it?" "Oh, nothing." So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's just good to highlight to people what they could be doing right moving forward. It sounds like you are someone who's very practical, very down to earth, and also very, very resilient as well with everything that you've gone through. Because, as I mentioned in our intro, that you've had so many changes, not only in business, but in really geographic location, coming from the States over to Guatemala, over to Poland and Phnom Penh and South Africa, and it's quite amazing. How have you managed all of these changes in your life? How do you stay on top of it?
Um, I'm very fond of saying that I'm too dumb to quit. So, and I actually think there's an element of truth to that. And I mean, maybe I'm not dumb, but I think that it's very easy to, you can, and this is like a kind of a cliche, the sort of glass half full, glass half empty, but anywhere you go, it's one mindset would be, oh my gosh, I'm in Cape Town and I don't know how anything works in Cape Town. Yeah, well, but you didn't know how it worked when you started wherever it is before either. And things tend to be at least somewhat similar. And then the benefit you have when you go into any new market is you see a ton of things that the existing incumbents don't.
Mm.
Um, because you start. I mean, anyone in any market is kind of guilty of this. I mean, once you've been situated in it long enough, I mean, you sort of take things as like a de facto standard. This is how it works here, right?
Mm.
So you stop questioning it. But when you come in as an outsider, you see things differently, and I think that's what you really need to focus on if you're going into a new situation, is to focus on what do you know that other people don't, or how do you, what things can you see that other people can't see? And when you're new to a situation, being a fresh set of eyes, it's very easy, frankly, I think, to underestimate just how much you see that could be done differently, just because you have an experience set and a reference set that's different than the incumbents, right?
Mm.
So, and I think if you stay focused on what you've got as opposed to what you don't have, like, oh my gosh, I don't know how this works. Well, there's always going to be situations like that. And I mean, those situations exist even in your own home market, right? I mean,
Mm.
you branch out, and you start doing something new. I mean, there's always going to be a situation where, you don't perhaps know something, so you either got to learn it or find somebody that knows it already. So, I think if you focus on your strengths and going into a new market where you know your business, and then you can see ways that people are doing things in this new market that could be vastly improved, and that's a really, really big value add for you when you're like going to new clients and stuff.
Yeah, actually, it sounds like you've really developed your resilience and self-reliance as well. And I like this, looking at things with new eyes, because I'm just thinking, now social jukebox, trying to segue into the social jukebox bit, is that you've looked at the way people are doing things with regard to their content marketing and their digital marketing, their social media marketing with new eyes as well, because I'd like to find out a bit more about Social Jukebox, because it's a new way of doing things, it's actually a very simple way of doing things. And as I mentioned when I first called you up, I am just so happy that you've created it, because it's made my life so much easier. I've tried a lot of other applications to try and simplify my social media marketing. And then when I stumbled upon Tweet Jukebox and I started using it, thinking, wow, this is so easy. And it's so great that it not only posts, but it reposts when I forget to post. And now you've branched out, and now it's Social Jukebox. Tell me how this all came about.
Well, I was I was trying to sell Alphabet Success, and I discovered, like a lot of people, after finishing writing a book, a lot of people think, "Oh my gosh, I wrote a book. That's so great," and I'm not discouraging people. It is great to have, a book behind you that kind of encapsulates your thinking. But the thing you'll find very quickly after finishing the book is that, other than maybe some close relatives, nobody cares. So you have to build an audience, right? You have to find people that care about what you know about, and that's what I was trying to do. And my preferred platform at that time in 2013 was Twitter. So I did what a lot of people do. I went and I started posting and I started putting things out there, and I found different tools to help me schedule things and try to keep a steady stream of content going and get to know some people. And I did that, and I found the amount of what I call monkey work, where I wasn't adding any value. Nobody cares how something appeared in my tweet stream. People only care about your content to the extent that it either A, helps them, or B, helps them look good because they share it. But no one cares. You could have delivered it on a white horse, on a velvet pillow. Nobody cares how it got there. So after doing the scheduling for a while, actually I was in South Africa and I was getting ready to go to the Karoo, which is kind of like the outback or something in South Africa. And so we were going to be on the road, and I was talking to my wife and I was like, this is crazy, because now I got to figure out, like, when are we going to be somewhere that I have a reliable broadband connection that I can upload more posts. And with that, I said, you know what, I'll figure that out, but I'm going to call Len, who I referenced earlier in our talk here. And I picked up the phone, I called him, and I said, look, here's what I'm doing. There must be a way to do this using the Twitter API, et cetera, et cetera. So we got into a conversation, and we ended up kind of speccing out the software over a few days. The original product was just for me. I didn't go, oh my gosh, this is going to be this awesome tool that I'll share with the world. It was, I'm sick of doing this myself, and I don't care if I pay someone to build something for me, because I don't want to do this. Not only the posting itself, but even keeping track of my content, because I had a lot of different quotes and photos and things like that I was sharing. So he built the tool for me, and then other people started asking me. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you must never sleep." It's like, well, I actually sleep great. My software doesn't, though. So it kind of came up with the idea of, having this tool that would be a little bit like an hourglass full of content, and then when it was done posting, it would flip over and start posting again. And provided you have enough content in any one of those reservoirs, which we call jukeboxes, it'll keep posting. And one of the reasons it works is, for one, it saves you busy work. Secondly, most people aren't, they're not watching your social media feed 24/7. So if you repost something, in 23 days, most people aren't going to go, hey, on June 4th, you posted this. It's pretty egocentric to think people are like keeping up with what you're doing that closely. And if they are, well, God bless you. You have a really loyal following. It really worked for me. And then when people asked me about it, we went out with it as a free product just to see if people would use it, and they did. And we signed up 30-some thousand users. And then last November we put up, we created a paid version, and put up a payment gateway, and we had a fair number of people. I think the initial sign up for the first week was about 500 people, and now we've got 1,600 people that are paid clients, and that number has been steadily growing over the last year. So I mean, we're very pleased with the progress, and I can't say that I've been absolutely killing it, in terms of like trying to market the devil out of it. And that relates a little bit to actually, kind of like, you talk about what you do in that like career coaching. I really like the fact that I'm pretty hands-on with this business because I actually get kind of an intrinsic value from that. Yeah, it'd be lovely if, I had a gazillion users and I was the next Google, but, I don't know that I'm really all about that. I mean, I'm pretty happy to just have a relationship to people and know that I'm helping them. So it's interesting. Like when I was starting, I think maybe I had a little bit like kind of a big ambition for the thing, but now I can feel that, like, when somebody brings me a problem, they go, hey, I'm doing this podcast and what do you think? And how, and then I, kind of walk them through some things and then maybe share some of that information with other podcasters. I like doing stuff like that. It's a lot more fun than just getting into the whole game of like, I'm going to create something big, really big.
That's right. You know what's really coming through is you love what you do, and you're doing it because it helps you. Because I mean, back when you were going into the outback with no internet, it's so many businesses, really successful businesses, start simply because someone wanted to do it because it was a need in themselves. And if it's a need for you, it'll probably be a need for somebody else. But one thing that I was amazed when I first started using Tweet Jukebox, and on the website it says, if you've got a problem, contact me, and it's Tim at Tweet Jukebox. And I thought, oh yeah, okay, you've probably got this entire tribe of people behind you, and virtual assistants all over the world doing your thing. But no, it's actually you who responds. And I was so thrilled when I contacted you, and then you emailed back, and then even getting you onto this podcast. And I have to admit, can I tell everybody that I woke you up at 4 a.m. because of our time difference? It was so funny because, well, yeah, let me tell the story. I reached out to Tim. Tim responded so quickly, which was wonderful. Then I sent a calendar invitation, which, Tim, you did accept, okay? But I mean, I guess maybe with Google or iCal, somehow we got our time zones mixed up. I thought you were in America. You're over in Poland. I'm in Australia. You thought I was in America. So today at, what time was it? It was 12 o'clock in Sydney. I was Skyping you and messaging you and where are you? Because you accepted the calendar invitation. Then you finally responded at 4 a.m. I can't believe you're awake. And you said, Jane, it's 4 a.m. I'm in Europe. So I felt so dreadful, and I thought, oh, he's never going to talk to me again. But then I said, well, how about, in 5 hours' time? And you said, okay. So that's what's so magic about you, that it's you that people get. If you want to know something about Social Jukebox or Tweet Jukebox, you really get Tim Fargo. So that's fantastic. So I think also the fact that you want to keep improving and honestly, it has made my life so much easier because I've used other platforms and they're great because you can schedule, but once you run out, it stops. Whereas the beauty of your Tweet Jukebox or Social Jukebox is that if you've got enough and you run out, it just reposts over again. So you don't actually have to worry as long as there's enough variety in your content and you're not repeating 2 tweets over and over and over again for months at a time. So thank you, Tim.
Oh, my pleasure.
So okay. So right now, with Tweet Jukebox, and Social Jukebox, you're obviously enjoying it. Tell us, exactly how does it work?
Okay. So what you do is you sign up, and what I would advocate, like, let's say, for instance, people are getting started and they have some interest. Let's say, I mean, I'm going to use mine because that's what I know best, right? And so I have an interest in photography. I mean, I'm a reasonably decent photographers. So I share some photos in my tweet feed at Alphabet Success. So I have a jukebox with photos. And then I also have been a big fan of quotes. And it's something that's pretty resonant on Twitter. And you get fairly decent engagement if you've got decent quality. So I've got a fairly substantial, I've got about 5,000 quotes that I've dug up over the last few years. So I have a big jukebox filled with those. Then I've actually created a lot of memes. So I've got about 3,000 of the 5,000 quotes now in meme form. So let's just take those three, right? So I've got photos, textual quotes, and then some kind of like photo that helps express the quotation. And I've got these all at different frequencies, and they're all posting to Twitter. And now, because of Social Jukebox, I'm posting some of those to LinkedIn and Facebook also, because we're now supporting those two platforms as well. And the idea is that it allows me to continue to share content. And actually, let me add one other thing in there that I think is important to your audience and any audience is, I have blog posts that I've written over the years, and almost everything I've ever written is pretty evergreen. So, I'm sharing that back catalog of content that I've written, and I'm using, and this is what I'd recommend to anyone who uses my tool is, it would be awesome, I suppose, to go sit in a hammock once you've got the thing loaded up. But what you might want to do at that time is take it and provide your audience with some depth of thought, in terms of positioning yourself as an expert in a particular area, that you're either like trying to be an entrepreneur in, or the area that, your career is in. Because that's, the posting itself, let's say the photos and quotes, and some of the things are just like my interests and kind of support kind of a general way that I think. So I'm portraying myself in a certain way. But then the blog post for the people that go, I wonder what this guy thinks about whatever. Then people can get a little more depth as to what you think about. And I think that's the real magic of using a tool like mine, is that you can take a step back, and then you can do the things that you're actually going to be most rewarded for. And that is, providing people with some depth. The other stuff is a little bit of, it's kind of like, it's a little bit of a campfire, right? But then once you get people to the campfire, you want to have something to tell them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where your more deep content comes in. That's, as they sit next to as they come to your campfire, when they show up, if you have a good blog post there or podcast there, or if you're a YouTuber or whatever, you'll have something there that they go, oh man, that was really interesting. I didn't know that about, chemistry. I didn't know that about real estate. I didn't know that about podcasting, whatever it might be. I kind of gave you the front end mechanical piece, which is you load your content into these different reservoirs, and you can post those at different frequencies, and that's kind of how it works. And then I think the why is there's the time savings, and then I think, as I said, most importantly is taking that time savings and translating it into something that's really valuable for the audience you're after.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that's so important, because there's an awful lot of noise out there when it comes to marketing, because, everyone's got their Facebook feed, and they've got their Twitter feed, and LinkedIn's getting busier and busier. And if it's just noise and no substance behind it, well, what's the point? It's great to be able to click on something and think, oh, that's interesting. Then here's another link that leads you, drives traffic back to your own website, where all of that value is. And so that they can learn something new, or they can, download the book, or they can do whatever it is that's going to really help them. So I think it's like a vehicle, isn't it? But certainly for an entrepreneur, Social Jukebox saves you an awful lot of time. But then ultimately, what are you saving time for? It's time so that you can enjoy working on your business rather than in your business. scheduling
Sure.
posts on a day-to-day basis as well. And certainly what it's done for me is that it's helped me to get away from my phone a little bit, thinking, I have a feed that's empty, this is no good. Now I know that it won't need to be empty. But certainly I had to spend a lot of time creating the content before I can post about it. So it all goes around in a circle in the end. And so what are the plans for Social Jukebox moving forward, Tim?
I mean, the biggest thing that I'm working on is I want to make the platform more collaborative, because I think the real power is in the network. I mean, we already have a library where people share content, and it's an opportunity for people to maybe put kind of their greatest hits out because other people are looking for content to share that might resonate with their audience. And that's a fairly active space, but I want to upgrade that and make it a bigger part of the day-to-day product where, for instance, let's say that you were coming out with a new book and you had a launch group of 100 people, and you were like, hey, I've got these 20 tweets or 20 Facebook posts or whatever. I've got 20 posts that I'd love for you to share across your social media. You could just share that jukebox with your group, and they can just plug it in and hit the on button and it'll just go. Because that's, as somebody that's done a few launches with other people, I mean, that's probably one of the biggest challenges. Even if you give people ready-made posts, like, they've got to load it into something, right? And I think if you hand them something that all they have to do is hit a switch, the easier it is for them to share it, the more likely it is to happen. And I think that's another intersection we want to address, is helping people interact and share with other people. And the other thing I really want to do is allow people to collaborate on jukeboxes, where you might have people that you're part of like a society or a network with, and instead of people passing something back and forth, people could be permissioned in to just be a participant in a particular, a little bit like almost like with a Google document or something, where you might have editing permission, so you could go in and add content to that jukebox. Because, like, let's say it's the Society of Career Coaches of Australia, and I don't know if that exists, but we'll pretend that it does. So maybe you're part of that, and one of your things is you're hosting an event in Sydney for a group that's coming in, and you want to add to the social media feed for the society a particular post. Well, instead of sending it to someone, you could just have collaborative permission and just add it, right?
What a great idea. Yeah, because I mean that means there's just so much scope for it to grow and make everyone's lives easier. Everyone can help to really promote each other, because I always see it sort of builds your tribe. It gets bigger and bigger, and everyone's assisting each other, which I think is a beautiful spirit for entrepreneurs. And I found actually that entrepreneurs do like to help each other as well. And certainly if there's going to be, like a society or an association or a membership group, what a great idea. So I can see really good things for Social Jukebox in the next few months? Or is this a bit more of a longer term plan?
No, I mean, I was working right before we got on this call. I was working on the specs, and I mean, I wanted to do a ground up rewrite of the software anyhow to make it a little bit faster. And when I talked to the developers, I said, when we redo this, let's not just redo what we've already done. I mean, I think there's a few, it's not going to be a radical rewrite. I mean, some of these functionalities are actually already there because I was doing some of this stuff for people kind of behind the scenes. And then I realized, like, the mistake I made was I put myself at the top of like a hierarchy, right? And what I should have done is said, the power is in the network, right? And so that now I'm addressing that by, when we rewrite it, I'm going to put more of the functionality to all the users, not just me.
That's a good idea. I think I can see really wonderful things happening with this, because certainly I'm a strong advocate, because it's just made my life so easy. only very recently, since I discovered it. So I look forward to everything just growing and becoming more collaborative, and certainly if I can help in any way, I would be delighted to. Now, Tim, What would you say, because you are a serial entrepreneur and you've got brilliant ideas, if someone's thinking of, say, getting into entrepreneurship, what would be your top 3 tips for success?
Top 3 tips for success. I would say first and foremost, solve a problem that people care about. And I see this on an often enough basis that it worries me, because people, like, I actually met a guy here in Poland, another American, and he was telling me about an app that he was working on, and I won't reveal what it was just because I don't want to identify this person, but I was listening to him tell me, and I thought, this has pretty much zero application to anybody that I've ever met in my life.
Oh dear.
So, but and you're like listening, and I mean, was really enthusiastic, but enthusiasm's awesome, and it's definitely something that's nice to have. But I think, like I say, first and foremost, solve a problem that people are really trying to address. And this was something that was pretty easily addressed in a myriad of other ways. It was kind of like selling a bucket of water, trying to sell a bucket of water to a guy with a garden hose. So I think that's like ground zero is solving a real problem. And here's the thing. I mean, in today's market, and I'm sorry, I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit, why this is so important. And it's so easy to figure out, right? Because you can do things like create a landing page. You can outline your idea. People are so, oh my gosh, I don't want anyone to know my idea. Ideas are a dime a dozen. Okay. And what you want to do is, even if your friends or other people go, oh, that sounds pretty neat. I mean, just put up a landing page with a buy button. And you can track that buy button, how often it gets clicked on. If people are trying to buy it, then you know it'll work. And actually, the even easier thing than doing that is just going to a business that already exists that needs better execution. That's what Richard Branson has done time and again. I mean, Branson's not an innovator, not an innovator in terms of market. Branson's an innovator in execution. And I think that's much better. So solve a problem. And the problem might not be that it's a brand new business. It might be that it's an existing business with really crappy participants. And the second point, which marries right into that, is to be really focused on delivering what you promised to deliver. That might sound super basic, but when everything's going great, it's easy, right? It's easy to deliver when everything, but there's going to be obstacles, and there's going to be times where doing the right thing just stinks. I had a couple problems with the software when we were first launching, and there were people that came and, I want a refund, I want this, I want that, and I didn't really want to do some of those things and jump through some of those hoops, but that's what you signed up for. You didn't sign up just for the good days. You signed up for everything. And you need to execute on all the things, not just the things that you feel like doing, right? Somebody, you'll be the first one on the phone to take an order. Well, react the same way to a refund. Refund promptly, just and because if someone's not happy, just let them go. It's not worth it. So I would say execution on everything. And then third, going back to my too dumb to quit kind of thing, I would say you need to stay at it, right? I mean, through this journey, just using Social Jukebox as an example, we've had some flat spots in the growth curve. I've gotten pretty burned out because I do everything, and I've tried to smooth things out with a little bit of forethought on my part to not jam up the bottleneck too much, because I'm the one I am the bottleneck, so to speak. I mean, I'm the passageway everything goes through. But, by staying in it, I mean, I went from having, a nice, cute little business, and now it's a pretty decent business. And I have visibility on, I think, it being a great business. And it hasn't always been easy, and it hasn't always been fun. but I do something, and it's people, there's quotes I think about it, but I try to think about, like, when I'm feeling dismal, if I was starting and somebody goes, you look, you seem like a nice guy, you're just starting out. Here's, 1,600 clients. Here's, 40,000 free users. See what you can do with this thing. Oh my, I would have been over the moon, right? I mean, I had to build this thing from scratch. So, it's very easy to get mired in what you don't have, because you've got vision as to what you want. But sometimes it's good to sit down and go, to pull out the diary, which I actually keep one, and see how far you've come, and just keep plodding along. I know that last one is to make it more succinct. Just stay in the game. Just stay in the game.
Yeah.
If you stay in the game, sooner or later, that is very often the breaks come to you, not on your forecasted date, not on your launch date, not on your anniversary date, not on your birthday. They come maybe even when you least expect it, but you've got to be in the game. And so don't give up. Once you get some motion, just stay at it. And I think it's easy for people to get discouraged, because sometimes it doesn't seem like it's going well, but just keep piecing it along.
Yeah, all three of those tips are so valuable, but I think this final one, staying in the game, is so important. As you say, when you get a little bit of movement, a bit of momentum. And I listened to this talk, and this gentleman was talking about exponential growth. And how, if everything you do is a success, and then you double it, and you double the effort, and you double the effort every single time, that equates to exponential growth. Because very often we do something over and over again, a bit like taking one step at a time, and it might take us, say, 10 steps to get from one end of the room to the other end of another room. But and that's just when it's one step at a time. But if every step is double the effort, then actually you could end up going all the way to the moon, just with the exponential growth. And I think this is what must be starting to happen, and I hope will be happening with Social Jukebox, because, it's starting out, it's just growing. You've now got 1,600 paid members, and, I can't imagine how many free members who are already using this great service. But I think as the word gets out and there's more collaboration and more people are really enthusiastic about it, it's just going to really, really take off. I can see great things happening for Social Jukebox. So I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom, Tim.
Oh, Jane, well, thanks for having me on. And, fingers crossed. I mean, if you, like I said, my first item, I think if I can solve a problem to help people be able to share content more easily, then it'll probably work in my favor. So
yeah, and what really comes across so very strongly just talking to you is that you are so humble, and you're just a genuinely nice guy. So how lucky for me to get to talk to you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for your time, Tim. I really, really appreciate it, especially after I woke you up at 4 a.m.
No, thank you, Jane.
I won't do that again. I'll make sure I know which city you're in. This is the thing with podcasting. You meet these people, and amazing people, and you could be anywhere in the world. This is truly the beauty of podcasting. It's absolutely global, and I just need to be careful with regard to time zones, because I'm way down under.
Well, Sydney's one of my favorite towns, so it was a pleasure talking.
Well, I hope you come and visit one day, and I definitely owe you a coffee or a big drink. So thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate your time.
All right, Jane. Thank you. And again, I appreciate you having me on.
Okay, bye. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download and free 30-day trial at audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers. There are over 180,000 book titles to choose, so give it a go and get your free audiobook today from audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers.
You've been listening to Jane Jackson Careers. Sign up to receive regular career advice at janejacksoncoach.com.